Hello, strangers. Another video day today. This is part 4 of the I Remember series, and if you've seen the part 1 and part 2, uh, I numbered those appropriately. I made part 3 the I Remember video that I did about the German snacks, so that's been retitled. So if you are wondering why this is part 4, not part 3, that's the reason why. Go back and watch part 3 there. And I'll probably have a link. Whoop, there it is. Probably have a link somewhere over here so you can go back and see that. So this is part 4. And part 4 is going to be a little bit about the settling in. As I mentioned in part 1 and part 3, probably part 2, we had my mother, my brother, and I had left Oklahoma and driven up to Michigan to meet family for a little bit. We met up with my mother's dad, my grandfather, Freddie Foster, who I'm named after, and we drove from Michigan, from southern Michigan, down to Charleston, South Carolina. And I believe we put my grandfather on a plane so he could go the rest of the way to where he lived outside of Tampa. And we made arrangements so that my mother's car could be shipped over to Germany. And then we got on a plane and flew that night. All night. And the most memorable thing about that was that, of all things, I saw the movie Condor Man, which they played on the plane. Most everybody else slept, but at the time they had the speakers hooked up through kind of air hoses in a sense in the seat, so I didn't get one of the little headset things, similar to these. I just put the headset up and kind of listened that way. Turned it up as loud as I could. About 3/4 of the way through the movie, the guy in the seat next to us, he had enough of his headphones. He wasn't watching. He was falling asleep. He handed me his headphones, so I was able to put them in and watch the rest of the movie, the rest of the way through. If you're not familiar with Condor Man, it's a Disney movie. It's a lot of fun. It's kind of a Disney movie meets James Bond thing. And of all things, it has Michael Crichton. Not Michael Crichton. Yeah, I'll find it. I'll edit this and put that in there somewhere. But yeah, he was in there, and later went on to become the first Phantom of the Opera. So that was Michael Crawford. Anyway, so he went on. We watched that movie, and I watched it all night. We flew all night and arrived in the crack of dawn, early morning hours in Frankfurt. And then, as I mentioned, we drove down to Baumholder with my dad. Met us there in a little Fiat that he had purchased while there. Just beat up piece of crud. The doors didn't even close properly. But we drove down to our place in Baumholder. So this is going to be talking a little bit about where we lived and how I got settled in there. So stick around. So as I mentioned in my previous videos, particularly part 1, we arrived in Baumholder on October 31st, Halloween Day, early in the morning, after the 2.5 hour drive from Frankfurt.
So it gave us a little bit of time to kind of settle in, get our stuff unpacked, unpack our suitcases, meet some of the neighbors who were there, and then we went out and got Halloween costumes real fast, so that we could go trick or treating a little later on that night. And our apartment, as I also noted, was right there at the end of the street. There's a two-level thing, so what you can't quite see is that we are in a hill, and the part of the upper part was actually lower down the hill than when the part where we were on. Again, our apartment was the one circled in red there, way at the end of the street. The housing very much, looks like this. It's a long row of apartments, and they were apartments. They were 3-bedroom apartments generally, at least on the main floors. They were a little raised above the ground, so regardless, even if you were on the bottom floor, you still had a flight of steps to go up there. And there were 3 flights. There were 3 rows of stairs in each building, and each row of stairs would have 2 apartments on either side, 3 tall. So you have 6 altogether. Now, if you look at the picture here, you see the rows of dormers across the top of the roof thing. Some of those, they were known as annexes, and some of those actually were converted into apartments. So you could theoretically have 4 stories worth of apartments living there. And then below that, if you took the stairs up and go into the apartments, there was a stairwell that went down into a basement. These particular apartments had rather large storage areas, so a lot of the stuff that we brought over from Oklahoma ended up in boxes, either in our spare bedroom or down in the storage area, which conveniently for us happened to be right off the stairwell. But not only were the storage areas there, but that was also where the laundry room was, and they had I can't remember if they were coin operated or not, but they were very much the coin operated type, washer and dryers. I don't know if we had to pay or anything like that, but they were definitely those kind of washer dryers at the time. There was a large area. I don't quite understand why it was there. There were clotheslines there, so I mean, if you wanted to, I guess, air dry your clothes instead of using the drying machines, you can actually pin those up. Um, but there weren't too many lines in there. I think that area might have been, before they had the drying machines up there. These buildings were built by the French um, during just after World War II, while they occupied the area. And then again, like I said in earlier videos, the Americans moved in.
Now, as I mentioned in part 2, this is kind of the layout of how our apartment went, almost exactly. In fact, this is the way it looked if you were to look down on our apartment. And of course, the other side of the stairway flipped. But there were stairs going up to it, which were a bit of a problem uh, increasingly as Dad's back degenerated, which I mentioned in part 2 also. So the one room was kind of a storage area. Mom and Dad had the other one, and Jim and I had a bunk bed in the third room down there. We kind of faced out onto the street, and I've got a few pictures. These are kind of recent pictures that I found. This is how the good idea of how the living room area looked like. Looking out onto the balcony there. Now I seem to remember that instead of the door that they have here, it was more of a sliding door, but I can't quite remember all that clearly. But that went out onto the balcony, and like I said, we were on the lower floor, the first row of apartments on the bottom there. There was a small flight of stairs, like I said, to get up there, but we were down the bottom there, and then we had people living above us. And what you might notice underneath the windows there, and will also be in this next picture here, is kind of a radiator thing. Now, when we were there in 1981, 1982, those were actual honest-to-God radiators. and those were the way to heat the apartment. And pretty much every room had one. There was no real central heating. Remember, these things were built by the French back in the late 40s, early 50s. So fast forward 30 years later, and the technology hadn't advanced as much. Looks like it has since in the 30 years since, but and this would be kind of representative of what my brother and I in my room looked like. Um, the where the blue cot thing is there is kind of where our bunk bed was. So we'd be up in there, and then all of our toys would be literally all over the floor there. Now, a little story that I can kind of tell about my mother. Shortly after we arrived there, obviously she wanted to be able to drive. She put her car on the boat to be shipped, so it was on its way. So she wanted to be able to drive around. And as, again, Dad's back degenerated, that became increasingly more important that she be able to drive. So now I was, 8, almost 9 at this point. So my memory's a little fuzzy, but I do remember that she, I think, took a bit of a driving course, kind of a class. I'm not too sure how long that lasted. I'm guessing maybe about a week or two or so. To kind of get herself familiar with the German signs, which were everywhere, even in the middle of the American part of Baumholder, and all the various other military bases and stuff like that. There were still road signs in German all over the place. So she had to kind of familiarize herself with those. Some of them obviously translated. Stop sign is a stop sign is a stop sign. But other ones didn't. And there was a written test at the end of the class and that she had to take, and she failed it. Couldn't remember all the signs and everything like that. Now, as I said, we live in this kind of a circle area here. This is a bit of an oval. You drive in, and where the grassy area was, you split off and you keep right and go up and around. And at the tip of that split was a sign there that said, in German, Einfahren. Einfahren is translated literally is one drive. One fahren drive. Or one go, actually. So basically, it's a one-way sign. Now, Mom had seen this sign ever since we moved there and had gone back and forth in and around the circle. And again, in order to get there, you had to remember where our apartment is over in the left-hand corner there. So she had to hit that split, go up and around the drive there, around that circle there, in order to even get to our apartment. So she passed by that thing every day that Mom or that Dad drove her around. So she's seen it. And that was, of course, one of the things that she missed. She came very close to passing it the first time, so we really ribbed her about it. How can you miss, of all things, this sign? How can you miss Einfahren? One way. So the one-way sign that led us around to our apartment. Again, there in red. So that'll be the end of today's little bit. The next few days, I'm gonna the next few sessions here, next couple parts rather, is going to be about my going to school and the things that I did for fun. But again, that's another story for another time. So until then, I'll see you later. Stay strange.
Thanks for watching my video. If you like what you just watched, don't forget to give me a thumbs up below. For more of my videos, click the subscribe button on the screen or down in the description below. If you'd like to support me and what I do, I have books that you can read. The links are in the description below. If you want to support in other ways, you can go to my Patreon page and help me out there. You can also follow me on various social media pages. The links to all of those are also below. Thank you again. Stay strange.